Hey, thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening. We appreciate you hopping on the Hail Trace Live as Helene is making its landfall. Now, the National Hurricane Center just a few minutes ago gave us an update on Helene, but before we get right into that, I want to give a chance for everyone to jump on here. I see we've got several people already on X. Thanks for joining us here. Let me go ahead and share my screen so that you can see what I'm looking at. So here is your radar that is closest to Helene down in Florida. Here's Perry, Florida, and then we've got Tallahassee just a little bit farther off to the west. You can see the first initial eyewall band has now made landfall on shore of Florida, and that is where I get to the National Hurricane Center. On their Twitter page, the National Hurricane Center said that at their 10 p.m. update, 9 p.m. Central Time, Helene's eyewall is beginning to move ashore along the Florida Big Bend region. Now, Helene is an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. As catastrophic winds spread on shore, please do not leave any of your shelters and remain in place through the passage of Helene. And then they go on to include their alert here, which I think I just closed out of. There we go. We knew this was going to be a very intense hurricane. We knew that this was going to be a very extreme event, and we are seeing that unfold in front of us. Helene is producing catastrophic winds that will be spreading onshore in the Florida Big Bend region during the next few hours. This is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation, as we just mentioned, and they're once again encouraging people not to leave their shelters because of the life-threatening conditions. Some of the big things to report here. The University of Florida Coastal Monitoring Program tower located on Cedar Key recently reported a sustained wind of 59 miles an hour and a wind gust of 78 miles an hour. So right now what we're seeing is those initial tropical storm force winds, and we're going to get those hurricane force winds just momentarily, if not already. So put your comments in the questions. Put your questions in the comments center, and I will get to those in just a minute. I want to show you the radar. I want to show you what we're watching as meteorologists. We have meteorologists watching this at all times. Alrighty, so here is your radar. So we're at KTLH. That is the radar that we are getting our data from, and then we'll go up and we'll talk about the tornado warnings in just a minute as well. There is the eye wall. There is the eye. Now, it is not an official landfall until the lowest pressure of the eye goes over land. So we still have a little bit. And if we want to go over here, you can see all of these dots here that you can see. This is Hurricane Hunter flight paths. Okay. So let's just pause this. Let's go to the most recent flight path. There is your eye. There is Helene, a massive system. And here is your lowest point as of now. So 937 is the pressure reading, 937 millibars. That's pretty impressive. Okay. What we've got currently for some of our strongest wind speeds, I think that we're probably seeing stronger wind speeds here, but they're definitely over 100 miles an hour. And that is what is coming onshore Florida right now. Okay, so kind of zooming out, give you a look at where we are right now. Here's Tallahassee, here's Perry, and actually I have a view. I cannot believe that this camera is still surviving right now, but let me see if I can make this a bit bigger. I assume this is still a live view of a live camera in Perry. A lot of power outages in this area, but I think this is still a live view. So here we are. You can see we've got a lot of winds, a very high wind speed, making this camera do a little dance back and forth here. You can see the wiggles and wobbles. Every now and then you can also see the street sign wiggle back and forth as well. And here are the power lines on the left side of your screen. You can see the trees back here also taking a hard hit from this storm. And we have already had from this storm several casualties reported. Now, zooming out even more, you can see that we've got several tornado warnings in Georgia right now. These tornado warnings goes until 10:30 Eastern time. What they've got here is a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, but a tornado was located 9 miles northeast of St. Catharines island, moving to the northwest at 55 miles an hour. This thing is moving. This thing is moving fast. And that's something that we've seen with Helene too, is that it is a fast mover. This thing is really booking it. Right now, I think the National Hurricane Center has an update of how fast Helene is moving northeast at 20 knots, 23 miles an hour. So that's very, very fast for a hurricane. To give you an idea, what was our last hurricane that we were tracking? Was it Francine that made landfall most recently? Whichever one that was, it was moving like 12 miles an hour whenever it was coming on shore, if not even slower than that. Don't hold me to that. But I do remember it was much slower than what we're seeing right now. Okay, so here we are with some of those outer bands moving onshore. You can see that we've got rain that goes all the way down as far east as Gainesville, as far south as Inglis. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And even Tampa, still getting some of these outer bands. These are skinny bands here. I'm not as worried about the tornado risk farther down to the south. If you were to look at this hurricane, and let's actually take off some of these, make it a little less distracting here. If you were to take this hurricane and split it into quadrants, so a line down the middle, a line down the middle that way, this northeast quadrant, the upper right quadrant, would be where we're watching for our tornado potential. And you can see if you kind of expand that out a little bit, that is where we're seeing tornado warnings right now. This is actually the least amount of tornado warnings that I have seen all evening long. We've seen like 3, 4 at one time. Now we just have one in Savannah, Georgia, just north of Savannah. For this one, National Weather Service has going until 11 o'clock, so another half hour here, 11 o'clock Eastern time. And there was, they're capable of producing a tornado located over Bellinger Hill area, moving to the north at 45 miles an hour. Again, put your comments in the questions center. I think I can see those in the screen behind me. Now I am doing this, producing and forecasting all on my own here, so you're gonna have to be patient with me here, but I can see your comments now. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, so I can see your comments. If you're commenting from those areas, I see that most of our viewers are coming from Twitter right now, but we have a few on Facebook, we have a few on YouTube as well. Going back to this camera here, oh, we may be losing power now up in Perry. Perry is so close to where the eye is expected to make landfall. We are going to power outages now and see what type of damage this has already done before it even makes landfall. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. Let's move this over here. And at any time you can't see what I'm talking about on my screen, because again, I'm producing and forecasting at the same time, let me know. Okay, here's what we have. I'll go north to south, leaving Florida, or the last Florida obviously looks like the worst, with the worst power outages. Customers out in North Carolina, 12,000. Customers out in South Carolina, 5,000. Customers out in Georgia, 25,000. So if you add all of this together, what are we at now? About 45,000 without power. That is not including Florida. And holy moly, look at the Florida customers without power, almost 800,000. The majority of that looks like it's coming from definitely the West Coast here, Hillsborough County, right in the center of the peninsula. But then you can see that a higher percentage of people are without power in these counties that are just on the Big Bend area of Florida here, maybe northern side of the Big Bend area, Lafayette County, Dixie County, Levy County, and Gilchrist, I hope I'm saying that correctly as well, have the most percentage of people without power. Now, there's not a ton of people that live in this area, but they are without power. And then we've got a few more who are without power as you go to the west, and then a ton more as you go to the east. So kind of zooming out and taking a look at our other states here. Most of these without power are on the west side of Georgia in Clay County. And then we can take a look at North Carolina as well. Again, the west side of North Carolina in Avery, Mitchell, Iredell. Going back to the hurricane here. Going back, oh, and we've got another tornado warning once again to the south of Savannah. All right, just checking the comments section here, seeing if we have any comments or questions from anyone. Let's go to some of our radars. Okay, so this is kind of a more detailed look at this is what meteorologists would look at whenever we're looking at this hurricane. Now that it's close enough to land, we can actually get radar data from the Tallahassee radar, which we hope is going to make it. KTLH, we're hoping that they don't lose power as well. And we're hoping that we can still get data from them as this comes on land. You can see now part of the eye starting to move on shore here. We're starting to see some of those rain-free areas with lower wind speeds starting to move on shore. Now remember, it is not an official landfall until we get the lowest pressure on shore, the low of the low, which earlier we saw from the hurricane hunters was, what's it, nine? I'm gonna guess and see if I like 938. It was 937. I was so close. 937 is what the hurricane hunters measured as the lowest pressure. Now, something about the lowest pressure here, the lower the pressure of a hurricane, the stronger it most likely is. What we saw from this hurricane is it was upgraded to a category 4, a bit farther back to the south. Is it there? And then the pressure continued to drop after it got upgraded. So what we can see from that, what we know from that, is that it's strengthening as it's still approaching landfall. So it's still strengthening. It was getting worse and worse and worse for those in Florida because it is strengthening even as it is approaching landfall. Even as it's making landfall, it seems like this hurricane is not slowing down. And that's a very interesting segue into something that I was going to talk about later, but we can go right into it right now. Take a look at this landfall, okay? We're going into a very thin part of Florida here, right? This is not a ton of land to be in Florida for the hurricane before it makes it to Georgia. So it's moving fast, as we mentioned earlier, and the speed of this hurricane is going to propel it farther to the north, and it's still going to be very strong in Georgia. We're at a category 2 hurricane expected in Albany, Georgia. Okay, continuing farther up to the north, we're getting category 1 wind speeds in places like Atlanta, tropical storm force wind speeds in Tennessee. So you can see as this continues to track to the north here, and if we can take off, see if we can take off the radar. There you go. You can see a little bit more of the forecasted track of this. So here's your category 4, 2, 1. These are different models you can see now. And then your tropical storm or depression as it gets into places like Tennessee and Kentucky. So this is not only something that's going to impact Florida, this is something that's going to impact Georgia and Tennessee and Kentucky as we go into the overnight hours tonight and into early Friday morning. Turning back on that radar now, showing you what we're watching as this, and I can actually back this up so you can see the rotation here. Another thing that's been talked about a lot, especially if you're on Twitter, if you are on weather Twitter, is how much lightning from this. That also is an indication of a strong storm. Oftentimes with hurricanes, you don't get as much lightning as you would expect, with such a strong storm. You're getting a ton of lightning with this on the west side of the storm and even on the back side as well. So you're getting some really good lightning numbers with this, which is really, really impressive. What that tells me, just intuition talking here, what that tells me is that we're going to have some really good convection on shore once this makes it on shore. Oftentimes what we see from hurricanes is once they make it on shore, we start to see that tornado number go up. We start to see high wind speeds that aren't just straight line wind speeds. What you're going to see, since we have so much convection already going into landfall, I think we're going to see more of that. I think that tornado risk is going to be very interesting to watch here. Let's see what the Storm Prediction Center has for our tornado risk. So this is what we've seen all day. Oh, hang on. All day today, as I mentioned, it's going to be that northeast quadrant of where the hurricane is making landfall. There's landfall right about there. And then if you look up to the north and east, there's your tornado risk right there. I think they were pretty spot on with that today. For tomorrow, we have this a little bit farther off to the east. There's your tornado risk for tomorrow. We can kind of zoom down into this here. Wilmington in that level 3 risk, Charlotte, Raleigh in that level 2 risk, and then that level 1 a little bit farther out, including Charleston, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, just to the east of Charleston, Virginia, West Virginia, and then we've got Richmond, West Virginia, as well in that level 1 risk. So that's just another part of this. We've got all the rain and the wind and everything coming into Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then you've got that tornado risk. I don't know if this will show up here. Yeah, not for day 2. But yeah, you've got the tornado risk on the east side of this storm. So it just kind of shows you that this storm is not only impacting land where it's making landfall, but it's also impacting so many other states. The impacts are going to be very, very widespread here. I'll stop that. I know that it's making that like black and then colors, and it's going to give you a headache if you look at it too long. All right, let's see if we have any questions on here on this Thursday evening. We appreciate you jumping on. We'll check our cameras in just a minute as well and see if our cameras have updated or if we've officially lost power out in Perry. Checking for your questions now. I've got a dual monitor set up right now. And I assume you can hear me. I didn't even. All right, sounds good. All righty. Okay, let's get back into the radar here. I must be explaining this phenomenally because I don't see any questions on there. There's Perry. That's where our camera was. Let's check back in on our camera and see if we can get any readings. Nope. We're using Florida cameras here. We've been watching them all evening long, and it looks like we must have significantly lost power in Perry because we are not getting anything. Maybe, let's see if this will load. Is this live? Okay, maybe we do have a camera in Perry right now. I would assume it's live. Obviously, it's not great because, ooh, is that a power flash? Did you see that? Whenever we see those green and blue flashes, power flash. Okay, we're going to keep this up because we saw those power flashes back here. It's hard because this camera is so blurry, but we're going to say that was a power flash. And it would not surprise me because you can see the strong winds, heavy rain coming into this area. So this is where our camera is right here. Here's Perry. And our camera is like right up here. Not our camera, the Florida's camera. There's Tallahassee. Go farther to the south, Tampa. Tampa got rocked with storm surge and high winds earlier today. But I checked some cameras in Tampa earlier, and it looked like things have calmed down a little bit there. Let's go back to that camera. Watch this again. Let's check on this other camera here. I assume all of these are still live because they said they were, and they'll go offline if they're not live. This one was in color earlier. We don't have any color anymore. It looks like we've got some sort of power in Perry. That's good news. Here's your power outages in this area. We can actually go, right into this and see who was without power with whatever energy company you have. Pretty great website here. Going back to this other camera. And I'll check and see if there's anything from the National Hurricane Center as well. The National Hurricane Center kind of doing some updates all around here. They are talking about other places. Tropical Storm Isaac right now going the opposite direction. So if you see anything about Tropical Storm Isaac, it's a fish storm. It's out. It's not impacting the U.S. It's going the opposite direction. But that's what they're updating right now. They do daily updates on the different storms across the Atlantic. Okay. If you're just now joining us, I see a few comments coming in now. One comment saying, surprised that they still have power in Perry for now. Yeah, so a lot of places in Florida have lost power, obviously. I'm quite surprised too, and it may be that we're getting a loss of power now because we're not getting these cameras back. After we closed off of them, not getting them back. I was surprised too that we even had, this camera has been on and offline all evening, even before we were starting to get into the most intense things. And we're in the most intense in Perry right now. Heavy rain, high wind speeds in this area. The hurricane hunters were recording at least 100+ mile-per-hour winds earlier. Their low, their low was back a few frames ago, right? There was at 937 millibars. So we're expecting something like that on land, but it is not an official landfall until we see that low pressure or get a recording of that low pressure over land. Let's see, are the hurricane hunters out right now? Are we getting any new readings from them? They're back here right now. That's where they are. So my assumption is we're probably going to see them circle back in at some point. They may be waiting for this to make a little bit closer to landfall before they circle back in. Yep, we've lost this camera. Looks like Perry has lost power. We can check Tallahassee. I wasn't getting good cameras from Tallahassee earlier. So these green ones are the ones that will have like the live video. Yeah, I'm not getting any cameras from Tallahassee. There you go. There's one. This bridge. And maybe it's gone. Alrighty, if you are just joining us and you didn't hear me say earlier, let me show you what the National Hurricane Center posted. So this is what initiated our live earlier, that Helene's eye wall is beginning to move ashore along the Florida Big Bend region. This is a Category 4 hurricane. Earlier we were getting wind gusts of 78 miles an hour. Sustained wind at 59 miles an hour. Obviously, we're expecting those numbers to go up. We are also seeing the tide gauge located at Clearwater Beach recently reported a water level of a little over 6 feet above the normal sea level. So we're seeing high water rush into this area as well. Again, peak storm surge, the National Hurricane Center said peak storm surge was right around 20 feet. That's what they had forecasted. Peak storm surge, 20 feet. That is absolutely insane. And the size of this storm is also very impressive. You can see how large this storm is. And just for those of you who are not meteorologists and weather nerds like we are here at Hill Trace, what we're looking at here on your left upper quadrant of the screen, this is base reflectivity. This is your classic radar that you often see meteorologists use on TV, on live streams. This is what you're probably looking at. Over here, this probably is very confusing for you. This is storm relative velocity. So the greens are going towards the radar, the reds are going away from the radar. This is absolutely crazy, right? Because we've got all kinds of greens and reds mixing together. In just a minute, I'll show you something that may look a little bit more familiar to you. Over here, you probably don't need to look at this at all. KDP, which basically shows how heavy the rain is falling. Sometimes we also use this for hail as well. And then over here, we're really not seeing a ton from this. Normalized rotation, which is just mumbo jumbo right now. But I do actually want to pull up another screen here and get you here and get you a look at a radar. Do we have any tornado warnings right now? We do. Let's see if we can get some data populating in here. Slowly, it says it's downloading. Michael on YouTube is saying Tallahassee is going to get a lot of damage too, unfortunately. Absolutely. I think most of their damage is going to be wind and flooding damage. But yeah, they're going to get a ton of damage as well. You can see, going back to our GR Earth here, Tallahassee getting that damage. And it looks like we've got some really heavy rains right now on the western side of Tallahassee as well. Where are hurricane hunters at? Still on some of these outer bands out here. But you can see the eye wall has, the initial eye wall here has made landfall. The start of the eye on the east side, at least, the northeast side, has also started to make landfall as well. Deckle Beach, if someone knows how to say that, let me know how to say that. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. We learn a lot of town pronunciations in the field of meteorology, something I didn't think would be part of the job, but we learn a lot of geography and a lot of town pronunciations in the field of meteorology. Going through some of these other products here to make you all aware of what's going to happen later on this evening. If you're watching from any other place that's not Florida right now, you also have hurricane warnings that go all the way up into Georgia. We've got tropical storm warnings as well. This also looks a little mumbo jumbo right now as well, but tropical storm warnings, they go all the way up to Georgia. And then I think these are the tropical storm or tornado warnings, or excuse me, hurricane warnings that go all the way into northern Georgia. One thing that's really interesting, oops, let me go back to that. Is that Tennessee, all of these tropical warnings, hurricane warning, tropical storm warnings, stop in Tennessee. It's not a coastal state. Do they even have the capability of warning for a tropical storm in a non-coastal state? I think that's really interesting. We have those tropical storm warnings that lead all the way up to western North Carolina, but then they stop in Tennessee. They do have high wind warnings, they have flood warnings, which kind of make up for that tropical storm warning. But I think that's really interesting. You know, have we had a tropical storm in Tennessee before? I would say we probably have at some point, But there you are. We're expecting that tonight is for this storm to continue to the north, Category 2 in southern Georgia, Category 1 near, if not in, Atlanta. Some of the models actually want to bring an eye, still holding that eye together in central Georgia. Absolutely phenomenal storm. And then you can see that progression as it moves to the north into Tennessee. And if we even look a little bit farther out here, this thing kind of does a funky turn into Tennessee and Kentucky, and it's going to stick around in this area for how long? Late Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For a long time, it's going to bring rain into this area, and it's going to bring some really impressive rainfall totals. Take a look at what I think it's the Climate Prediction Center, Weather Prediction Center, that issues these excessive rainfall, or I guess risk of excessive rainfall here. Excessive rainfall outlooks. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Very, very rarely do we get a high, this pink color, a high risk here. And look at how far this goes. Again, impacting so many states here, Florida, the eastern portion of Alabama, all the way to Georgia, the western portion of South Carolina, and western portion of North Carolina as well. I mean, that's just the high risk. That's that level 4 out of 4 risk. And then, of course, we have that level 2 out of 4 risk that goes all the way to Tennessee and Kentucky. And that is just day 1. As we look ahead to day 2, okay, this is new information. This is not something that we had on the board earlier this morning. We did not have this pink, this level 4 out of 4 risk there's no cities around here. Let's see if a city will pop up. Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, Asheville, North Carolina. Level 4 out of 4 for tomorrow. And my assumption with this here, just going off of intuition, what we're watching for and what what NOAA's thinking of this is we're going to get a ton of rain in this area, right? This is a mountainous area. These are the Appalachians right here. All of that rain has to go somewhere, and in a mountain, it will fall down to the lowest surface. And I bet a lot of this will be flash flooding because of runoff. You're going to see tons of videos that look like rivers where rivers never were because of all of this runoff that's creating so much water accumulation in one spot. That is my assumption of what they're going for here, because they're going to get a ton of rain in this area, but I bet there's some lower elevations that I don't know that for sure. That's just my intuition, but we'll move on. We'll move on here. A level 2 out of 4, a slight risk for excessive rainfall, which is flooding anywhere from Arkansas to Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, all the way up to Ohio, most of Kentucky included in that, and all of Tennessee included in that. Day 3 here, so we're moving into Saturday at this point. Also an increased risk from what we saw earlier today into Ohio and Kentucky. So if you saw our forecast earlier today, this is brand new information. And then day 4, finally, we see a little bit of relief, but still watching for that excessive rainfall in some areas that are just getting it. I mean, take a look at like North Carolina and Virginia, just like day after day after day after day of rain. So that's just another factor. We talked about the high wind. We talked about the tornado risk here. And then there's your flooding risk as well. Let's go back to our radar. The eye making a little bit more progression on land here. Tackle Beach. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Let's see what our comments are. This is interesting. Michael with the comments over here saying that he's been to a tropical storm in East Tennessee before, or been in a tropical storm in East Tennessee before many years back. it caused rock slides in the mountains, and they had to shut the interstate down. So this is not only an area that is just now getting rain. This is actually rain. We've seen rain in this area the past few days, and we're seeing this the next few days as well. So it's just the soil is already saturated. Where is that water going to go? That's another thing. The soil is saturated. Think about the stability of trees right now. High winds come in, and there's really nothing holding those roots together because the soil is so loose and saturated. Those trees are going to topple a lot easier than what they would if it was, a hard ground. So that's a really interesting thing that could cause power outages too. More power outages. We're going to see power outages no matter what, but there could be more power outages. Where are hurricane hunters at? Do you see them? We can play the game Spot the Hurricane Hunters. There they are. Did you find it before I did? They're getting back into some of these weaker winds. The dots here represent wind speed. So as we get into the blue dots, the winds are going down, green dots higher, yellow dots even higher, orange dots even higher, and red highest wind speed. There. So they're getting into some lower wind speeds, some weaker winds out on these outer bands out here. Some of these other questions here. Yeah, some questions about traveling over the next few days. I know there were questions about sports this weekend in this area as well. Hopefully they can still play, but we'll see. The type of damage that this does can sometimes vary. Let's see what the National Hurricane Center, if we've gotten any updates from them, because we are getting very close to landfall now. Very close. Okay, National Hurricane Center 3 minutes ago saying Hurricane Helene, very close to making landfall in Florida Big Bend. Wow, I just said that, but I'm glad we're on the same page. Accompanied by a catastrophic storm surge and life-threatening winds. It was fascinating to read some of the local forecasts today from some of the local forecast office, some of the local National Weather Service offices. They were using words like potentially unsurvivable storm surge with this. That's very intense wording. That is showing you how seriously they are taking this storm. We were talking earlier about where we would see the tornado risk. If you split this into a quadrant, you're going to see that up to the north and east. But where would you see that storm surge risk? Well, think about it. Here are all those winds. It's moving like this. I wish I had a cursor to draw. Moving this way. Those winds are pushing all of that water up here up to the east, the west coast of Florida. So to the east, up the west coast of Florida, to places like Cedar Key, Horseshoe Beach. I'm not going to try to pronounce this one, but you can see where my cursor is pointing here. All of this in the Big Bend area of Florida. I'm getting some reports that we have some radars down. I wonder if we're getting any new data from this, or if this radar is down too. Looks like we're still getting radar here. We've got more tornado warnings as well. Here's your tornado warnings. 1, 2, 3 tornado warnings. Here's your first one. Okay, the most southern one here. Very similar to the messaging earlier, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Tillman, moving northwest at 45 miles an hour. Again, these storms are moving. They're moving quickly. This a little bit slower than what we saw earlier. Flying debris will be dangerous to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be damaged or destroyed. Damage to roofs, windows, and vehicles will occur. Tree damage is likely. Going to the north now. Very similar messaging to what I just read. This goes until 11:45 Eastern time, 10:45 Central time. They're warning this by radar indicated rotation. Oops, did I just close out of that? There you go. So nothing reported here, but that's kind of how, I mean, this is so messy, right? That's kind of how these storms are, is that it's these pop-up tornadoes, right? And that doesn't mean that they're weak. These spin-up tornadoes, you hear that and you think these are going to be weak tornadoes. They're not going to do too much. They can still do a ton of damage. You can get EF2s out of this. Radar indicated, once again with this one, a little bit farther to the north here, near Allendale. And it's moving, I know I said this earlier, moving to the northwest at 50 miles an hour. So these to the north moving a little bit faster here. I think these are only tornado warnings. We've got one. Grab a new radar here. Farther to the north. Populate some data in here. Got a lot of tabs open. If you get confused on which tab I'm looking at, me too. Okay, let's go farther to the north here. And this would be in, there you go, I found it. Roanoke. This tornado warning goes until 11:30, moving a bit slower now, okay? You can see we're getting farther away from that hurricane, moving a little bit slower. We don't have that push from the hurricane, which is moving pretty fast. Going to the northwest at 25 miles an hour, which I would consider here in Oklahoma about a normal speed for a supercell. And this is also radar indicated rotation. And you can see where those greens and reds are touching. That is where we're watching for rotation. That is indicating rotation. Close a few tabs here, get a check of our hurricane, which should be making landfall any minute now. Look at that, half of the eye wall. We'll call that about half of the eye over land now. And I'm wondering if our hurricane hunters are going to come back around and getting any information. Maybe they won't. I'm not quite sure. While we're in a little bit of a break here, put your questions in the comment center. I can see everyone from Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And hit that follow button for Hail Trace. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. We've got social platforms, LinkedIn. We've got social platforms for it. We post videos, short videos on our TikToks and Instagram just about every day. And it's weather stuff just like this. It is explaining things. Maybe it's showing you a cool weather. It's very, very similar to this, but in short form, and I do graphics for it. And it's just a great thing to follow. There's a lot of interesting stuff on there. I see we've got most of our people on our Twitter page now, a few people on Facebook, and a few people on YouTube as well. But YouTube has been the most talkative tonight. Twitter is very, very quiet. We have one of our first tornado warnings from these closer inner, I don't want to call it inner hurricane band, but these closer bands here. This one in Florida, this warning Confirmed tornado. Okay, so that's the difference from what we were seeing earlier, where we saw a radar indicated rotation and the National Weather Service said this is capable of producing a tornado, to now confirmed tornado. So we've got another hazard on this. Not only do we have the storm surge, the wind, and the rainfall, but now we also have that tornado risk. As I mentioned earlier, as this hurricane comes on land, that tornado risk goes up. Confirmed tornado near Belmont, 7 miles northeast of White Springs, moving to the north at 30 miles an hour. The hazard here, a damaging tornado. Let's go to our radar. And to make it just a little bit more confusing, let me switch radars. And while that loads and populates data in, I'll show you here. Here's that tornado warning. Yeah, it's on the outskirts of our radar here. It's really hard to see as we get farther and farther away from the radar. Look how far away that is. And it's cutting through that radar beam, trying to cut through all of this from the hurricane. So it's really difficult to see here. But let me see if we've got anything populated into here. High winds. Holy moly, high winds here. There's your tornado, confirmed tornado. One thing that you can tell that we're in an environment for potential tornadoes, we're at a higher risk for tornado activity, is whenever you see our velocity, doesn't matter if we're on storm relative or base velocity here, whenever you see it make this like S shape, that means we've got some really good shear in the air. You can remember that, S and shear. Shear is going to help these storms turn, creating that tornado risk. So that's just one thing whenever we're chasing here in Oklahoma that we look for. Whenever we see that S shape, we know that we're in for potential tornado day, good chase day. So let's see, we've got tornado warnings, confirmed tornado. Moving to the north, 30 miles an hour. And the National Weather Service here, with that same very intense messaging, this is a life-threatening situation. Make sure, if you are in this area, make sure you have multiple ways to receive your weather alerts. And that goes for Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky as we get into early tomorrow morning as well. But again, the messaging here, to repeat, a tornado is on the ground. Take cover now, move to a basement or an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. Try to put as many as many walls between you and the outside as possible. If you are outdoors or in a mobile home or in a vehicle, move to the closest substantial shelter to protect yourself from flying debris. And just a note to anyone who is not in this area, if you are ever in a potential situation where you could see tornadoes that evening, always make sure that you're dressed for the weather. Put your shoes on, put your rain jacket on. Always make sure that you're dressed for the weather. I mean, that's if you have to shelter, make sure you're dressed for the weather. Let's see if we can get, what are we at here? Let's move radars. There's your eye coming in. Most of it now over land. There we go. So what do we think landfall will be? Probably this Deckle Beach, most likely. There's Perry, Tallahassee. Getting hit, in the present tense, getting hit with high winds, high rainfall right now, heavy rainfall right now. And I'm waiting for the National Hurricane Center to confirm that. All right, let's check on our hurricane hunters out here. That must have been the last for that plane tonight, because the last one was about 20 minutes ago, the last reading that we got. So we're probably just waiting on the National Hurricane Center here to confirm landfall. Not yet, but we are watching for it. And there's your tornado warnings. Still radar indicated. We have one more farther up to the north in Roanoke. Also radar indicated. You can kind of take a recap of the day while we're waiting on the National Hurricane Center here. It's been a very busy day for them, as you can imagine. Taking a look at our tornado reports today, just north of Charleston to the west of Charleston here. Possible tornado, reports of trees down on the highway. Trees down blocking the lanes. Emergency manager relayed power lines down Bells Highway and High Cotton Road, possible tornado. So it looks like they had 3 tornado reports just to the west of Charleston and to the north of Douglas in Georgia. Also a reported tornado sighted on the ground. No property damage was observed or reported. I bet these will go up. This was yesterday. And a quick look at the, do I have Storm Prediction Center? No. Storm Prediction Center for your tornado risk. There you go, your high wind risk as well. And then your tornado risk tomorrow is farther off into the East Coast, farther up to the north on the East Coast. Wilmington at a level 3 tornado risk here. You can see that highlighted in yellow. And then we've got that level 2 for Charlotte and Raleigh. And then we've got that level 1 for Columbia and Richmond. So make sure you're prepared, because after we see this make landfall, I mean, that's just the half of it. And then we have, I mean, this massive storm is going to continue to cause issues for the next 24, 48 hours as it continues to track to the north. And this Deckle Beach got hit in 1993. That's what Michael's saying. I'll have to look that up. There it is. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. That's not look that up because I don't believe you looked that up, because I'm interested in it. I want to go back to our, now this is really whenever I've got all my tabs open. I want to go back to our power outages. I think we were on Louisiana because of the last hurricane landfall. Here's your power outages. Actually, I'm going to go to the whole state, or the whole US. Here's your power outages. Power outages have gone up within the time that we were on our live stream here. So within the past 30 minutes here, power outages have gone up from about 800,000 to over 900,000 customers without power in Florida. Most of that going on where we're watching landfall right now. We've got 20,000 customers without power in Levy, over 50,000 just to the east of that. Dixie, almost 9,000 customers without power. The good news is this is one of the least populated areas of Florida, so hopefully not a ton of people were impacted, but you can see 20,000, 8,000, 3,000, 10,000 people were impacted in this area. So we're thinking of you all as you are going through the next few days, if not few weeks, without power here. We've got more higher numbers here also in Georgia, up to 32,000, which I think we were around 20,000 about half an hour ago. So a lot can change just within a few minutes. Most of those power outages coming from, I don't know what county. A lot of these power outages, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. It all adds up. Over 7,000 power outages in DeKalb, 1,500 in Lowndes. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And then we've got a lot of power outages in North Carolina as well, but obviously the most in Florida. Lots of people without power. Those that do still have power in places like Georgia and northern Florida, make sure you're charging your devices now. If you've got friends in that area, make sure that you're reaching out to them and reminding them that they still have this storm through the overnight hours tonight and into early tomorrow morning. So once this makes landfall, once it's out of Florida, it's not done. That is not whenever the risk ends. We will still see high winds and flooding potential all the way through Georgia. I showed you that earlier, that flooding potential all the way through Georgia and even into western North Carolina and western South Carolina. And I am a bit surprised that the National Hurricane Center has not announced a landfall yet. Joey says from YouTube, extreme wind warning now in effect for parts of Georgia. Thanks for your update, Joey. We appreciate that. Yeah, and that was extreme wind warning. So they are expecting not a watch means that the conditions are in place that this could happen. The ingredients are in place that this could happen. A warning means this is going to happen. It's imminent that this is going to happen. So extreme wind. And actually, I want to see, I'm curious to know what they're warning for. What they're with what gusts, what level they have. I see high wind warning in this area. Here's your extreme wind warning. Until 2 a.m. So you've got another 3 hours on that. National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated extreme winds associated with the eye wall of Hurricane Helene. We're moving onshore 16 miles southwest of Perry. We've been talking about Perry all night long. That's where our camera was from earlier. Moving north-northeast at 25 miles an hour. This is an extremely, all caps here, this is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. So you can see their messaging is consistent with what we were saying earlier. They're taking this seriously. You should take this seriously as well. Precautions. Take cover now. Treat these imminent extreme winds as if a tornado was approaching and move immediately to the safe room in your shelter. Take action now to protect your life. So that is something that it is like a tornado. That's something that they hit the nail right on the head there. This is like a tornado. But the winds are not rotating. It's those extreme winds, that straight line winds, right? It's still high winds. That's your extreme wind warning now, it's still high winds, but you don't just have that extreme high wind for 10 minutes. You've got that for a long time, hours, if nothing else. So make sure that you are taking those precautions, heed these warnings. Very similar to what we said earlier, the safest place to be during a major landfalling hurricane is in a reinforced interior room away from windows. Get under a table or other piece of sturdy furniture. Use mattresses, blankets, or pillows to cover your head and body. Remain in place through the passage of these life-threatening conditions. And another thing that we were talking about earlier, make sure that you are dressed for the weather as well. Even though you're inside your home, and hopefully that does hold up, oftentimes you could come out of your safe place to a whole different world. It could still be raining. You could have glass or debris on the ground around you. So make sure that you're putting your shoes on, make sure you've got your rain jacket and any sort of radio way to get weather information that you have, flashlights, because this is coming in through the overnight hours as well. And you'll most likely be without power for at least tomorrow, if not the next few days or even weeks. So make sure you're taking your precautions if you have not already. Hopefully you have taken your precautions if you're in this area. Highlighted in orange, which is the extreme wind warning that goes anywhere from Perry all the way to, I'm going to say this wrong, Valdosta, as Joey mentioned earlier as well. So there it is, highlighted in orange. There's your eye. Almost completely over land. We've got a few more tornado warnings up here now too. 1, 2, 3. This is the thing about hurricanes is that you're going to have tornado warnings in all different places throughout the night from all of these different bands. Just to the east of Augusta here, we've got this tornado warning. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located near Millette. Moving to the northwest, at 35 miles an hour. It looks like they're trimming back this tornado warning. That's just to the south of Millette. Tornado warning for southwestern Washington County and east central Georgia goes until 11:45 Eastern time, and it's radar indicated as well. So in here, they're saying you could have these spin-up tornadoes that could cause extremely high winds and potential damage. So make sure that you're taking these precautions seriously. This is something that we're going to see all night long. So this is not something that's going to end anytime soon, which is why we're saying this entire area should have their multiple ways to get weather alerts, right? Multiple ways, not just from, it should be at least one that is not your cell phone, at least one that is not connected to technology. So I hope you have a weather radio or something, some way that you can get a weather alert. And here you are. Okay. At 11:20 Eastern time, 8 minutes ago, Hurricane Helene has made landfall in the Florida Big Bend region at around 11:10, so about 18 minutes ago, just to the east of the mouth of the Osceola River. I apologize for my pronunciation of that. Max sustained winds at landfall were estimated around 140 miles an hour and a minimum pressure of 938 millibars. There's your landfall. And we will retweet that on the Hail Trace on the Hail Trace Twitter platform. 140 miles an hour. So that's a solid Cat 4. Again, Category 4 hurricane is 131 miles an hour to 155 miles an hour. Sustained wind speeds. That's the big kicker there, sustained wind speeds. Gusts even higher than that. But again, max sustained winds at landfall were estimated at 140 miles an hour. Really, really impressive. Helene overperformed, I think, initially. I mean, it's hard to say what initially this storm is going to do whenever it's off in like the Northern Caribbean, Southern Gulf. But I think initially the National Hurricane Center had Cat 2, and Helene overperformed, and Cat 4 is what we got. And now we've got a massive storm moving into Florida that is going to continue up through central Georgia, make an east turn into Tennessee, and then continue into the Kentucky-Tennessee area through Sunday. So our hazards with Helene are not done yet, not even close. We've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday to deal with additional hazards here. Real quick before I wrap up and let you guys go for this evening, we'll go through our forecast and we'll go through some of the hazards that we are expecting from this hurricane one last time. And Michael, once again, yeah, unbelievable wind damage. Damage is going to be catastrophic. So also saying Atlanta is going to get hit by this as well. Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting because some of these models have the center of this going right through Atlanta. Others, I showed you one earlier. It's going to try to pull this to the east just a little bit. Either way, Atlanta getting those heavy rains, high wind speeds. Look at that, high wind speeds. And then that tornado risk further off to the east and up to the north. But okay, let's go through the biggest hazards. Here's your storm surge coming in from the south and to the east. You're going to see catastrophic storm surge in this area. So that's going to continue. Flooding as well. We've been talking about that flooding risk all night long. Here's your excessive rainfall outlook. That flooding risk is at a level, it's a high risk, so that's a level 4 out of 4, the highest that you can go, very rarely issued by NOAA. This includes most of Georgia, including Atlanta, so you're probably going to see flooding and ponding on the roadways in Atlanta. As I mentioned earlier, probably rivers, temporary rivers, where you don't normally see water gushing through. This goes all the way up to the western side of North Carolina, the western side of South Carolina as well, and then the flooding over the next 10 hours here goes all the way up to Nashville, Tennessee, and to Kentucky. There's one risk. That's your rainfall risk that does not stop tomorrow, but also continues through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as well. There's your risk for tomorrow, for all of Friday. A high level, a level 4 in Asheville. And we'll just, since I'm on this page, go through all of this here. Thursday 3 and Thursday 4. Other risks here include that tornado risk. So on one side, you have the wind and the flooding, and on the other side, you have that tornado risk that does not just include tonight, but also through tomorrow. And is this an updated, did we have an enhanced risk for tomorrow whenever we looked at this earlier? I can't remember, but either way, the tornado risk is the same. We have a level 3 tornado risk tomorrow through Wilmington, level 2 through Charlotte, level 2 through Raleigh as well, level 1 through Richmond, level 1 through Charleston and Columbia, South Carolina. So that tornado risk will continue as we head into Friday. Okay, wind, tornado risk, flooding. I think I've got most of those hazards here. One last look at the National Hurricane Center. Again, I know you see Isaac out there, Tropical Storm Isaac. It's moving in the opposite direction. It will most likely stay a fish storm. Why do we call it that? Because it mainly impacts just the fish out there. I don't think there's anything out there. Wind speed probabilities here. Holy moly. Here are your high wind speeds over the next 24 hours here. Tropical storm force winds going all the way up to through all of Georgia here, high winds through all of Georgia and even kind of skimming portions of South Carolina and North Carolina and then into Tennessee and maybe even getting up into Kentucky as well. Again, tropical storm force winds, I'm going to get this wrong, 73 miles an hour, 39 to 73 miles an hour, I think. So that's a very big range, but that's what you could see. Very, very high winds. That's damaging wind through most of Georgia. And again, something that we talked about earlier, not to repeat myself here, but I'll say it one last time before I hop off of here. The ground here is soaked. So there's so much water in the ground. The soil is completely saturated. All of those trees that you have in Georgia are going to be more likely to topple, take out power lines because the ground is already soaked in this area. You put the high wind on top of that, those trees topple a lot easier. So that's going to increase the risk for power outages. Alrighty, I think I've covered most of the forecast for tomorrow. If we don't have any lingering questions, I'm going to hop off of here and let you get back to your evening. If you are in these areas, follow us for more weather details, but make sure that you're following your local National Weather Service and your local news channel as well. They can give you the most up-to-date alerts through the overnight hours. There you go. There's your eye coming right into Perry right now. I apologize for the black screen. I hope that doesn't give you a headache, but I want to watch the eye, the landfall at, what'd they say? 11:10. Landfall 26 minutes ago. And I don't see any lingering questions. That is the last update from the National Hurricane Center. And that is the last update for me for now, but make sure that you follow Hail Trace on all platforms. We have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it. We have social media there. Make sure you follow us because we'd love to keep you updated on more weather events in the future. We are always doing these lives. Usually I have Derek with me, and he, of course, is going to return for more weather events in the future. All right.